Jim Bankoff.
All right, well, thanks, man. Morning, everybody. Thank you, Justin. It's great to be here. Nothing makes me happier than the opportunity to speak with fellow media nerds. I am one of you. I know, it's weird, but we're proud of who we are. In fact, when I went to grad school, a different Ivy down 95 a little bit, this was 95, 96. I literally every morning would grab the Times and the Journal, and I would clip out articles about the media industry, and I would put them in binders, and I had these binders stacked up of articles about the media industry. Well, thankfully, right around that time, Mosaic was introduced into our computer lab, and I didn't have to do that anymore. And now I have Media Gazer, and I've got Peter Kafka, who actually works for me, which is great because I can get the best media news without the scissors. So anyway, it's great to be here. We've built a company in Vox that really is about taking great storytelling, turning those stories into brands, and then building a business around it. And really, it's really that simple. I'll walk you through our origins and talk about those brands briefly. And I'll be talking about Vox, but I'm certainly not trying to be a commercial for Vox here. You don't need that. I don't think you're going to buy any branded content from me today. So I'm going to talk about Vox, though, in the context of what we do and how it might be relevant to you, and you can take from it what you will, hopefully something. Vox Media had humble origins. One sports blogger, Tyler Blazinski, who really was passionate about his team. Passion is the first word that I'm going to highlight. Passion about a topic. He was an A's fan in the Bay Area. For those of you who know anything about Bay Area sports, ESPN wasn't covering the A's really, and even in the San Francisco local market, the Giants were the baseball team that everyone cared about. So he decided to do something about it, and he started blogging. He happened to pick a team where there was a whole lot of great stories to be told. Billy Beane and Moneyball had started out with the Oakland A's team, and he started really chronicling this. But not only was he a subject matter expert on his passion, he also understood how to tell stories via this medium, a new medium. In his case, it was blogging and really understanding how to engage and delight an audience with unique insight based on his subject matter expertise, with voice, something that was an expression of who he was and the passion that he conveyed, but then also with technology and leveraging an understanding of how to get his stories in front of other like-minded people who might care about them. So fast forward that one Oakland A's blog, still around today, Athletics Nation, for you Oakland A's fans. I bet there's maybe one of you out there. We now have sports team sites for every single U.S. base, and now growing into Europe, team and sports topic. In fact, there are 320 in all, which comprises the foundation of our sports brand, SB Nation. Just as SB Nation was built on talented storytelling, passion, subject matter experts who understand this medium, all of our brands were. The second one we launched is The Verge. The Verge covers the future, and it does it through the lens of technology. And like SB Nation, it was founded by people who were passionate about those topics and remain extraordinarily passionate to this day. Polygon, the next one, it does the same thing for the gaming business, for gaming obsessives, but also people who just care about what has become the largest form of entertainment in our society and culture. We acquired a company called Curbed. Curbed brought 3 brands to the Vox Media portfolio. Curbed, which focuses on real estate and home, neighborhoods like this one. Racked, which covers shopping and is doing so particularly well in a social environment. Eater, which I think many of you are probably familiar with, which has become really the authoritative place for people who care about dining and food trends. We then launched our general news site, really what's become the flagship. We loved it so much that we gave it the parent company name, which is Vox. And over the course of the past couple of years, Vox has grown to become the fastest growing general news brand, and it does so in a particular way by helping to explain what's going on in the news and dive deeper into topics that we all hear about in our feeds, we see on TV, but we might not always spend the time, even as intelligent, informed people, to get up to speed. Vox has made its mark by doing that. And then the most recent entrant to our portfolio is Recode, which focuses on technology, but unlike The Verge, does so through the lens of business and growth, with a particular emphasis on Silicon Valley. And I think our founders of Recode, Kara Swisher, Walt Mossberg, and of course Peter Kafka, are people who are familiar with you as technology-focused and journalism-focused people. So what do these all have in common? Again, talented voices who are leveraging the Vox Media platform to build brands. It's our job to create that platform to enable them. And creating a platform means a lot of things. It means a technological platform. We have a technology platform called Chorus, which enables better workflow, better storytelling devices. One theme in this medium is constant change. And technology can help assist in that change if you're committed to agility, if you're committed to the alacrity that it takes to always be introducing new ways to make our creative people more productive and more successful. The platform also leverages data to make sure that our stories are finding the right people at the right time, doing constant multivariate testing, not only to understand the data behind our audiences, which I think is something that we talk a lot about in media, but also understand the content signals that the stories give off. Stories have lots of data to analyze: the time of the day it's published, the photo imagery that's used, the headlines that are used. So matching the audience with the content signals gives us insight and ensures that the stories that we work so hard to craft are found by the right people at the right time. But it's more than voice, it's more than technology platform, it's also a culture of respect, a culture that strives for diversity so that we can tell the best possible stories to the widest possible audience as we can. We've taken that very same approach, those very same capabilities, and we've built a business from it. And I know that you're equally interested in how can we support our storytelling through a sustainable model. And I think we're beginning to do that at Vox Media. We're doing that by leveraging storytelling on behalf of our marketing partners. And the very same data, passion, voice that goes into creating stories for our editorial brands can now be leveraged on behalf of marketers. And yes, we're very careful to make sure that there's a separation. The same people who are working on our news stories are not working on our stories with marketers. But the same approach is being utilized. The same technology, tools, data capabilities are being leveraged on behalf of marketers. And in doing so, we think we not only provide them value, but we create a better product for our audience with stories from marketers that they're more likely to engage with. And in fact, they are engaging with at great numbers, and therefore it's working for the advertisers. What holds this all together and what makes our company different than a lot of our peers out there who are also doing great work is that we believe in a multi-brand model. In fact, as I just rattled off those 8 brands, and as I talked about the fact that we help marketing partners build their brands, we're really the only new media pure play company doing that at scale. The platform, the technology enables that. Other companies who I admire have gone after it with a monolithic brand, a portal, if you will, into a lot of different topics. Their way of growing is by adding a new section of content when they want to grow or when they have creative people who want to do something new or different. We believe that's a tough way to grow. By adding a new section, you actually just dilute your consumer and audience relevance as opposed to drive into it. So we took the hard route out of the gate. As a startup company, we decided to invest in multiple brands. And we did so because we knew that if you're going to lean into passion, if you're going to lean into voice, you have to have brands that signal authority, signal authenticity, an overused word, but a true word if you're trying to create brands that are relevant to people. And so we did the hard work of finding voices who could build up those brands. And we work with our marketing partners. I think they appreciate that as well. It all comes back to stories that build brands. I'm going to show you a video here. The video is about a new group that we forged that works on the cutting edge of our storytelling. Rather than show you our typical buzz reel, I thought this might be a little bit more relevant. And you'll see some of the people who actually work to tell those stories day in, day out. After that, Justin will join me up here for some Q&A.
When Vox Media's producers, editors, and writers come to the storytelling studio, they lead with a format.
And the first thing they want to know is, like, how can I do 360 video with a little bit of VR mixed in, maybe some geolocations?
What we want them to do is take a step back and think about the story and think about the audience. We fit squarely in the center of when story, content, design merge in between our 8 brands and Vox Creative. Why do you want someone to spend time out of their day with what you're creating? What makes me stop is a story that gives me context and relevance in my life. The more narrow and the more focused we can be, the sharper the voice is going to be and the sharper the storytelling is going to be. When Ezra Klein landed an interview with Hillary Rodham Clinton, Vox came to us and said, how can we take this to the next level?
And we pushed Ezra to do something in Ezra's style that was very unique for the audience.
The interview wasn't the story. The interview was the starting point to understand Hillary in a different way. And every part of that experience was carefully curated.
We designed it mobile first, and we designed a separate version that was tailored to the Facebook audience, a version for the Google AMP audience. We did an email newsletter that morning. Ezra did a podcast that was a different spin on it.
That story had over 1.5 million content views across all platforms. That's a win for us.
We used to approach a new story, we would really think about the desktop web. That has completely changed. Our audiences find us on different platforms and decide to follow us there because they know that we're going to be telling the best stories for them in those places. We have the best videographers doing Facebook Live on Facebook. We have the best producers doing Snapchat stories. We have the best writers composing tweets and live blogs for them.
We're really lucky at the Storytelling Studio. Because we're thinking about all these platforms, we can see how they connect and we can see how stories can be informed from one platform to another.
We do user testing. We use it to shape the content experience.
And what we learn, we take to the wider company, to Vox Creative and to all our brands. It's not just the storytellers that need to think about storytelling, it's everyone. Essentially what it is a way to cut through the clutter and to speak to a person in a real way.
Okay.
So thank you, Jim. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about first, and by the way, we are going to give you guys time for Q&A, so start to think of your questions now. One of the things I wanted to ask you first, a lot of big media companies, struggle with innovation. They want the startup pixie dust. Is Vox still a startup? Do you still think of it as a startup company?
Well, I definitely think of it as one, but we're now up to, I think, 750 full-time employees, and we reach an audience globally on our websites of 200 million people, and if you count our native content across Facebook, etc., that number actually triples. And I don't throw out these numbers because it starts to become pretty meaningless when you say over 500 million people. We're not out counting those. So it's hard to think of ourselves as an early stage startup still, but we do pride ourselves on attempting to, what we call internally, thrive on change. Mm-hmm. And
you even said you're optimized for change. I was going to ask you what that means.
I think that's it's an aspiration. I don't want to be one of these people that claims to be optimized in change, because change is hard, and I think as human beings there's resistance to change. But one of the things that we try to embed in the culture and have tried since the beginning is to know just how quickly things are moving. And if we want to be successful, if we want to continue to change, and I'll have to use the word disrupt the way that has been going on, we need to preserve that flexibility and be willing to change, be willing to lean into and invest in things that are working, being willing to sunset things that change. As the video showed, and I think it's true, I think, 3 years ago, 7 years ago, we created a bit of a revolution by disrupting a small part of the landscape, the local sports market. That's grown into being something much bigger. It's primarily communicating via desktops. As a blogger, we would hope that other blogs would link to us. That's how we got our audience, and that's how we spread our stories. Now we spread our story. That grew to spread your stories through discovery and search, and of course in social. But now it's all happening on a phone, and a phone obviously necessitates new storytelling devices. You can run through every app on your phone and ask yourself the question, how am I going to tell a story on that app? Click the email button. How am I going to tell a story in an email newsletter? Click the Facebook button. How am I going to tell a story via Facebook? Drill down on Facebook. How am I going to do it on Instant Articles? How am I going to do it in Facebook Live? How am I going to do it in video? How am I going to do it in Messenger? Right. Even within Facebook, there are probably 10 different storytelling devices. Go to the YouTube app, same thing. Go to the podcast app, same thing. I can go on for every app there is on the phone, but you have to challenge yourself to tell stories that are relevant to those media, yet keep one consistent thread across the story, keep one consistent tone across the brand. Those are the challenges, and they require us to act with alacrity. They require us to change when change is called for.
So a lot of people have looked at the scale that you've achieved and others, digital media entrants have achieved in the last few years, and sort of seen that convergence of mobile change in the media environment as enabling that. But they also now sort of look at the investment you've taken from larger media companies, the scale you're at, and say, well, perhaps we're at the end of a cycle in digital media investment. Do you think that's true?
No, I don't. If anything, that would presume that we've all figured it out. Right. And I think the last thing anyone feels as though is that they figured it out. If they have, they got to be careful. The way I look at these things, as new platforms arrive, new brands are created, new waves of investment enable those. I can go way back. Newspapers, magazines, cable networks. Each successive technological innovation in the media has spawned new media brands, and those new media brands have attracted audiences. There's a reason why the cable networks are not the same brand names as the magazines, even though they might cover the same topic. There's a reason why the topics that we cover are not the same as the cable network ones. New media attract new types of storytellers who create new kinds of brands that get new kinds of investment. I think we are fortunate in that we have successfully navigated from what was a desktop storytelling environment to what is now a mobile storytelling environment. However, new platforms are coming, continue to grow, whether it's AR, VR, and the headsets and other types of story devices, or whether it's connected TVs and the OTT experiences that they provide. I think you'll see new platforms grow, and with those new platforms will come new opportunities for storytellers and for companies.
So I do want to ask you about those new platforms, because there's a lot of enthusiasm on the campuses that we work at in VR and AR, of course. A lot of the demos today will be VR demos, AR demos, and a lot of the sort of most exciting startup activity in New York's around that space. And even your video, we're talking about 360 and the rest. Do you think there's an immediate timeline for the commercial opportunity around those platforms? Where are we at in the emergence of VR and AR?
Well, it's an exciting time frame, and unfortunately, I can't give you a date certain. But I probably can't even shed any insight that you can't read on dozens of journalists who cover this story really well. But the way I see it is right now a lot of innovation in gaming, a lot of experimenting on journalism. We conduct our own experiments. As we mentioned, we were proud to be the first 360 crew to go in the White House and interview the First Lady. We do other things too. Our Curved brand is doing 360s across different architectural wonders. Did Freedom Tower recently, pretty cool, on Facebook. So we're leaning into the experiments like a lot of other companies are. Those experiments are getting more serious every day. A friend of mine George K. I can never pronounce his right name. Just took the CEO job at Jaunt, and I think he left
from Hearst.
He left Hearst, who obviously a great company to get more pioneering around this new storytelling. I think well, that's just one executive shift. I think it's telling in terms of where we see opportunity and where we can do things. I know The Verge is at the center of covering the world of VR, and I think you'll hear more from us around how, as a news organization, we can start to understand that world and share information more about the VR world, because it's certainly something that we believe is coming, and whether it's commercial within 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, we'll see, but it's definitely coming.
Cool. It's time for some questions from you. There are actually microphones that are here in the aisles, and I'd ask that if you're going to ask a question that you scurry up to one of those right behind Jeff Jarvis, who will ask our first question of the morning. Jeff.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff.
You know I've been a fan of what you do from the very beginning, from a dozen blogs at SB Nation, because I love blogs and I love networks. This last week, Mode, formerly known as Glam, shut down. Gawker, of course, went through what it went through. Ariana left her little home of blogs. And I'm worried about the future of advertising-supported independent media. And you have expanded into native advertising as big companies can afford to do. I just wonder if you have any perspective on if one of our students from this school or the one down the street wants to make a career as a blogger, covering an independent topic, getting advertising to support that, do you think that's still alive, or has that gone by the wayside?
So a few different thoughts there. One thought is that the companies that you rattled off, I have friends in many of those companies, and things are definitely continuing to change. I wouldn't necessarily paint with a broad brush across the industry. Each one of those companies had specific strategies and specific circumstances that led to their change. And then you can point to probably more examples of companies that are thriving and growing. But as an individual, it is tougher, I would admit, as an individual blogger, for a few reasons. You can't simply just put an ad slot on there and expect the money to come flowing through. So that's a tougher model. I think there's never been a better time to be a creator of things, but I think often that creator has to begin their career, at least, as in part of a larger media organization or an up-and-coming media organization, or find scale on their own. There are obviously a lot of great independent YouTubers that are making millions of dollars. There are other individuals that are doing it, but they're doing it as part of broader platforms. So, the dynamics are definitely changing.
Thanks. Next question from Jordan, who just finished up from the new school, right?
Hey, Jordan.
Good morning, Mr. Bankoff.
Good morning.
My question is, how do you balance the relationship between cutting-edge innovation and the slow, widespread consumer adoption in our current transitional phase of media distribution? That's one part question. And do you time when and how you integrate a given innovation like the 360 video that you mentioned?
Good questions. You kind of cut to the heart of really my job used to be, I used to look at every pixel and every screen and approve stuff and look at every post. Now, unfortunately, I probably get to only watch or read a small fraction of everything that we create every day. And my time is spent more on the things that you're talking about, which is how we allocate resources against initiatives. And I wish I had a perfect answer to that. I try to get smart by talking to people like you, by reading things, by going out, by experiencing the products myself. I talk with our people who are experts on that, and then we make bets accordingly. And I think you can point to companies that are making far more aggressive bets in emerging technologies than we are, and you can point to many more companies that are taking it more slow than we are. So I'd say we're aggressive. We're not bleeding edge aggressive. We definitely take experiments, and by experiments I mean we're willing to invest resources before we see dollars. And we're capable of doing that. Now, we can only do that to a certain level, and it depends on each level. It depends on each initiative, really.
Oh,
So I'm going to take the next question from the woman behind you there, Jordan, and then I'll come back around here to Peter.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Smita Sen. Hi, nice to meet you today. So one of the things that's a concern for me as a reader is finding journalistic content that is meaningful. You see a lot of content that is like-driven and is just there to generate more likes and more views online. How do you balance that need to sustain and grow readership with creating risk-taking journalism?
So clickbait versus quality.
Yeah, I mean, so here's where I think Vox Media falls out on it, is that we believe wholeheartedly in quality. We do it in a way that is modern, in the sense that we know our audience is going to be on Facebook, and we know that the Facebook algorithm is tuned a certain way. We know our audience will be searching. So we embrace modern platforms. We embrace Snapchat, too, as a storytelling mechanism. But then we try to gear those stories to what are going to be relevant. But when you click, you get substance behind it. It's not to say every once in a while, I'm sure, I gave this talk once and someone dug up something that we did that was like less substantive and more funny. Yes, we'll do plenty of funny things too. But even I think our funny things are done with a tone and a voice, because everything that we're doing is laddering up to a brand, and hashtag brand is also overused, but what it means is a promise to the audience. And we need to fulfill that promise best we can with every piece of content, every story that we tell. And I'll contrast that to companies that chase algorithms for the sake of just growing audience. And there are plenty of those companies out there.
Unnamed companies. Unnamed.
Well, I'll name one. I mean, back in the day, Demand Media, for instance, and I'm not disparaging them. They had a very clever model of going after search traffic and reverse engineering the algorithm. Now, there are companies that do that in social, too, on Facebook. And I think what happens is not only does that not create brand, it might create traffic. It doesn't create brand, though. I mean, you don't think to yourself, oh, I got to go to Demand Media and get some of that Demand Media content. Like, that's not, and you can't build a conference off of that, and you can't create a television show the way that we're doing with Vox Entertainment. So we believe in building these brands, and the business value comes from building those brands. I think the platforms also believe in that. Mark Zuckerberg, if he sees too much pollution in the feed, he's going to change the algorithm to get rid of that pollution, just as Sergey and Larry did when they saw too much pollution in their search feed. So it's in the best long-term interest of our company to create quality.
The next question from over here from Peter.
Hey, I'm Peter Olson. I'm a creative technologist at IDEO, and one of the things that when Vox launched, it really embraced data and the presentation of data as a storytelling and journalistic tool. I think the next kind of iteration of that is the explosion we've seen in the last few years of artificial intelligence and all the kind of cluster of technologies around that, machine learning, computer vision, natural language processing, human text. How do you anticipate that figuring back into creative content and being used as a storytelling tool?
So I certainly can't give any specifics. You can, and so I'd love to hear them. But what I will say is, regardless of the tactic, and the world of AI is going to open up a whole new revolution of tactics, most likely. Like, one thing that we do focus on is we like to say that we are data-informed as opposed to data-driven. And what that means is that we use data and technology to help make us better storytellers, but we always value the subject matter expertise that the storyteller brings. This goes back to the previous question, too. We're not letting the data dictate the stories. That's where we'll draw the line. We are encouraging the data to inform the stories. And I think the same thing can be said of AI in the storytelling process as well.
You got time for one more?
I've got all the time in the world. It's your agenda, so whatever.
So we're running a little bit over, so I'm going to do something a little unorthodox. I'm going to ask all of you to ask your questions at once really quickly, and we'll see if there aren't some threads through them. So make it pretty quick. We'll start here with you, sir, and then come over
very
here.
quick, storytelling. How do you make sure it's objective? We see these days certain news media actually part of presidential campaigns, so how do you ensure objectiveness?
Okay, objectivity.
How do you acquire new brands and keep the original magic that made them so good in the first place while integrating them into the larger Vox family?
You don't snuff out your acquisitions?
Hi. The question is really around who you're looking for to hire. Are you only looking for the folks that can do the VR, or are you looking for the big thinkers that can apply the right kind of thinking and storytelling to the new technology as it emerges, or exclusively both?
Jobs.
Hi, I'm from the Tao Center at the Journalism School just across the street, and we just released a report on journalism and design, which focuses a lot on human-centered design. But that also brings up the issue of privacy. I don't want a news organization to know that I'm reading a story over breakfast. Who do you think will win out in this conflict?
Oh, boy. Nice try, but nothing in common,
all across the board.
All right, let's buzz through real quick. Objectivity, agree. It's a critical thing in this election cycle that's coming to us. I think in our case, I think our first step is acknowledging that we are human beings who, by definition, have bias, whether it's explicit or implicit. And there are small things you can do. Like, we allow and encourage people to have social media presence. Like, we don't necessarily, kind of tell people how they should behave. And so in doing so, I think there's an opportunity to understand who is bringing you the story that you're reading, and at least understand the background there. We also encourage dialogue about the stories with our peers via social media and elsewhere, and we engage in the discussions around those things. So it's not one of those, like, post it as and pretend that it's like this, this bureau that has posted something and then run away from it. It's say, I'm posting this, this is who I am, you can see, and then let's discuss it if there's something to discuss. Next question, in no particular order, I think was about who are we looking to hire, and I think we're looking to hire all sorts of people. And if you maybe rather than, for those of you who are interested in jobs, it's certainly part of the reason I'm here. I'm excited that you might be interested in a job, but rather than rush me at the end, all I'm going to ask you to do is go to voxmedia.com. You'll see our career section. We actually have tons of open hires, and they range the gamut. It's not just the cutting edge people. In fact, it's very little of that. I think what we want are ultimately great storytellers who are also subject matter experts in what they do. We also have people like you see in the storytelling lab, and those people live more at the edge of understanding the new types of media, and then we merge that with the people who have the subject matter experts. There was a question about privacy and who's going to win out on that. I think for my taste, I don't think audiences probably pay enough attention to how their data is being used, and I think we, as people in the industry, have to do our part in educating them in terms of that. We have an advertising model that is not solely reliant on data to be successful. Like, our advertising model is reliant on great storytelling to be successful. So, I think the industry benefits from anonymized data that's done in the right way and explicitly called out for the right way. But I think if we're not careful and if we don't educate audiences, it could go in the wrong direction.
How do you keep the magic in your acquisitions?
Oh, well, yeah, I think that was about like adding on brands. Whether, we've done a couple of acquisitions, but more of our brands we've built. And while they all have their distinct voices, they also have a lot in common. They focus on different categories, but what they have in common is point of view. What they have in common is that they tell stories across multiple different platforms and different media types. Sometimes I liken them to different sections of the same newspaper, and you might pick up one section based on your passion and interest. I might pick up a different section. They all have their brand names to signal that they focus on a different topic. But in many ways, they are comparable. They're not like completely different. So what we really look for are these people great storytellers who are committed to telling stories to a new generation in a new way, and do they share the same kind of cultural values that we do? And, are they going to be people that are as passionate as we are, that try to maintain the same sense of respect for one another as we do? And from there, we plow forward.
Jim Bankoff, thank you very much.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.